Welcome to Unclouded. I'm Ashley Brooks.
And I'm Ty Gowan here for episode 2.
And we are your source for the weekly astrological forecast and for some cosmic chit-chat.
I'm the cosmic chit-chat part, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely contributing a good amount to the cosmic
Okay, good.
chit-chat.
I appreciate that.
So, you said you had a gift for me, which is funny because last time I had a gift for you.
Yeah, I figured we survived episode 1, so I wanted to give you a little something. I said that into the mic correctly because I'm also learning. But here is something for your garden because we are in garden season. I can't talk about that astrologically. But yeah, we're in June. It's perfect time to plant this little baby for you.
It's so cute and beautiful.
You
What
want
is it?
Backstory on it?
Yes, please.
So this is the most, you can just put it down on the table if you want. This is the most goth tomato on the planet.
Oh, wow.
So I actually bought it from I bought seeds from a company that I'm not going to name because I found out from a forager that I follow. Her name's, or her handle is Black Forager. I don't know if you know her on Instagram.
I don't.
Fantastic follow. She knows everything. She said that the company that I've been using for a couple of years is a little problematic, and I believe her on that. So This will be the last of the seeds from them, but it is a genetically split with a snapdragon gene.
Whoa.
So that the fruit that comes off of it is the darkest shade of purple yet for a tomato, so that it looks
so cool.
almost black. So when you get this in the fall, like you can make like almost black tomato sauce if you want, but like
Goth pizza.
Like they look really cool.
I'm so ready. Thank you so much. That's amazing.
And it's rare too because the company I bought it from did not know apparently that there was little gene splicing going on in there, and they have only organic products. So they pulled all the seeds from the market.
Oh, wow.
So only people who snagged like the first batch of them have them, and everything else got destroyed. So
oh my God, this is like a rarity.
It's a rare tomato is sitting in front of you right now.
Okay, I am going to try my best not to screw it up.
Rare tomato energy is what I'm bringing to episode 2 of this podcast.
You gave me, a few years ago, you gave me a rare watermelon, and unfortunately that got mowed over by somebody.
And I planted one too, and it made this tiny little fruit, and I was so proud of it. I stepped on it. I didn't even know.
Why did we both destroy our rare watermelons?
We weren't meant to have it. That's why I'm hoping we get these goth tomatoes.
What was the rarity of the watermelon?
So that was the same company that I was using, which I thought their stories that go into the seeds were so cool. But that watermelon had been found in a desert in like a vase or something like that. It was like from an archaeological dig in Arizona or Nevada. And someone had found these seeds in a clay vase, and it was like a couple 100 years old, maybe 1,000. I'm not sure. But either way, it was a watermelon that's supposed to be grown with very little water.
My roommate mowed over history.
That's right.
And you stepped on it.
And I stepped on it. But, like, I think they planted a bunch of those seeds, and the story is that 3 grew.
Oh.
And so from those 3 seeds, they've been propagating, and that's how I ended up with the ones they're just not going to grow in Maine.
Yeah, it's not the best climate for such things, especially if it came from a desert. We're like the opposite of that.
Yeah, 100%. We didn't have a chance, so honestly, my boot and your roommate just kind of put us out of our misery because we might have had like a copper-sized watermelon after working on it for 7 months.
Yeah, I would have felt bad even eating that.
No, I would have had to preserve it.
Yeah, put it in like epoxy and hang it in a shadow box.
World's smallest desert watermelon.
All right, you want to get into the forecast for this week?
That's what the people are waiting for.
Yeah, right? So today we're talking about Monday, June 10th through Sunday, June 16th. And there is quite a lot of wild stuff happening.
Really?
I would say so.
Okay.
So let's just get into it, all right? Tuesday, June 11th, we have our first major transit of the week. It is happening at 9:21 a.m. Eastern Time, and Mars is newly in Taurus. It's squaring over to Pluto in Aquarius. And we tend to feel Mars transits for around a week or so, but that's when it's going to be the most intense, is on Tuesday, the 11th.
Okay.
So Mars square Pluto is a really tense aspect. It's a lot about going up against authority, challenging anyone telling you what to do, feeling really stubborn because Mars is in Taurus. Taurus is the most stubborn sign in the zodiac, and Aquarius is also a fixed sign. So they're very set in their ways. So you're not likely to convince anyone of anything or to kind of work around the rules. Like if you're going head to head with somebody, it's just going to end with both people getting really frustrated with each other. So it's not the best day or week really to try to confront authority. It's better to just kind of take a step back, maybe form your thoughts, figure out what you want from the situation before trying to like force it on anyone.
So pause on Tuesday.
Pause on Tuesday. And if you are a person who is in a state of authority, like if you're a boss or a parent, it might be good to consider how your effect can be on the people that are like either, working for you or for your children, just to make sure you're not abusing your authority.
So translating that, if you're in a leadership position, be how would I say it? Focus more energy on how you're communicating with people and not what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah, like rather than being like, what can I get from this interaction? What can I make this person do for me? Just try to hear them out and see what their side of the story is, because there can be a real abuse of leadership that's happening under this transit.
I feel like you could use that every day.
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like toxic leadership is definitely a thing, but I think this transit really emphasizes the stubbornness inherent in some people.
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay. Wednesday, June 12th, Mercury is squaring Saturn. So these are both square aspects we've talked about so far. Squares are a tense 90-degree aspect that's formed between two planets in the sky, and it always is a little tense in its expression, but it can be really good for catalyzing change. So
tell me more about that.
Yeah.
It sounds like they would be combative.
They are combative, but sometimes by coming head to head, it makes you realize what you really want. You know? So Wednesday, June 12th at 6:47 a.m. Eastern time, but really we're feeling it the whole day of Wednesday. We have Mercury squaring Saturn. Mercury is currently in Gemini, which is its home. That's where it likes to be. That's where it's able to be the most mercurial that it can be. And it is squaring over to Saturn in Pisces. So there can be some confusion here. We can feel a little out of sorts if we have to stick to a routine. That can feel a little frustrating. We might show up late. We might get lost going like the normal route we go to work, like weird things, like you can just get spaced out.
I've done that before and ended up in the mall parking lot.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I didn't realize it until I parked that I wasn't going to the mall.
That's kind of creepy.
It's how bad I didn't want to go to work.
Yeah, you were ready to walk around Pottery Barn. Do you remember how we used to do that?
It's still my safe place.
Yeah, we used to, anytime we needed to have a deep conversation, we'd go to Pottery Barn and just walk around because it was so harmless and gentle.
So harmless, and I know that I can't afford anything in there,
right?
so it's just nice to be in someone else's nicer home.
Exactly. So yeah, Mercury square Saturn, you could end up in a Pottery Barn, and I say go with it. I say, obviously we all have responsibilities. Saturn is the responsible planet. It wants us to always make sure we're doing our due diligence and, showing up on time. But this square is making it so if you do too much of that, you can really burn yourself out. You can get a lot of mental fog and confusion. So balance it out. Take your trip to Pottery Barn or wherever makes you feel chill and relaxed, and let your mind wander.
Perfect. Any other aspects this week?
Yeah. So on Friday, June 14th, we have the Sun conjunct Mercury. And this is happening at 12:32 p.m. Eastern time, though we really feel it all day on Thursday.
What's a conjunction compared to a squaring? Like where squaring is a little bit tense, what is the shape that a conjunction makes?
A conjunction means they're right on top of each other in the sky. So they're together. Their energies are combined.
So their energies empower each other.
Yes.
See? It's only 2 episodes in and look how
exactly. You're becoming the expert. Okay, so I wrote Thursday, June 14th on this, but it's actually Friday, June 14th. So just be aware of that. That was my bad. Mercury is conjuncting the sun. So this is considered the genius aspect. And a lot of people in history who are very innovative were born under this aspect.
Oh, cool.
So like Tesla, Edgar Allan Poe, people that were pioneers in their field, but maybe a little misunderstood during the time that they were alive.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, this is the aspect of that. So anybody who's coming into the world during this time, any babies being born, we got little geniuses on our hands.
I wish today's secret chart was either Tesla or Poe and you just called it. Like, I wish that.
That would have blown my mind.
Yeah.
That might be beyond my capabilities.
It's not, but that would have been cool.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Sun conjunct Mercury, what that means for all of us who don't have that in our birth chart is that we might find some like insights and ideas coming in. This is a very innovative transit. It helps us to have like a reset of the mind, and it allows us to look at a problem from a different perspective. We might just get like a sudden download of information or a sudden idea. So really all day on Friday, but especially around like 11:30 a.m. to about 1:30 p.m. Eastern time, like in that zone is when you're really going to be noticing that. So maybe step away from work and just kind of journal out your thoughts or write down some notes just so you don't forget, because it's very kind of ethereal, ephemeral, just kind of floating in the air. So you might want to jot it down because it could disappear as fast as it comes.
Snag it. Okay, cool.
And then finally, on Sunday, June 16th, we have Venus squaring Neptune. So this is happening at 11:46 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. It is pretty much the end of the week that we're looking at. And Venus is currently at the 29th degree of Gemini, and it is about to conjunct Mercury, which will be happening. We'll talk about that next week. It's going to happen on Monday.
Is that conjunction power fast love?
Oh, yeah, it could be. It could be like connecting to somebody really quickly.
Oh, so I wasn't wrong.
You're not wrong.
Okay,
That's
cool.
definitely a good interpretation of it. So let's talk about the 29th degree for a moment, because Venus is at the 29th degree of Gemini and Neptune is at the 29th degree of Pisces. That is the last degree of that sign. So it's like at the end of the quadrant in the sky that is Gemini or Pisces. So the 29th degree is called the anaretic degree in astrology. And what that means is it is the most potent because it's the most accumulated energy of that sign. So for instance, like, I don't know if you remember in chemistry, like the periodic table, there were those elements that were like the noble gases, but there was that element before them that was like one electron shy. And so they were very unstable because they were trying to get to that place of nobility.
Okay, yeah.
That's how I would describe this.
Great metaphor.
Thank you. I've been working on it.
Yeah.
So with Neptune and Venus in square, this is a little bit like fast love too, but it's like ignoring all the red flags. So Venus is love, Neptune is like compassion, being able to see the best in people. But when you kind of amp up that energy at the 29th degree and square it with this tension, it's like you're pushing past all the red flags. You're like, oh no, I know he's wrong for me, daddy, but I love him.
I feel like we've all had those relationships, whether friendships or romantic.
Exactly. It doesn't have to just be romantic.
Right. So,
yeah.
Be more judgmental.
Yeah. Or get a second opinion. If your friends are all telling you that this person, is a little sketchy, maybe they're not all out to get you, maybe take that into consideration. And of course, we don't have to be totally closed off, but just be aware of that and understand that you might be more willing to look past certain things that would normally be like are a fast, hard no for you on this day because you're really looking for love. Like everyone's really looking for love. Like that's the beautiful part of this transit. There could also be some creative tension where you might see this playing out creatively too, or financially. Venus rules over creativity and money as well.
Okay.
So this could also be like, oh, I'm going to spend this money because I think I'm going to like win, the lottery next week, like stuff like that. Just be a little bit more mindful and maybe a little more realistic.
Basically, have the knowledge that your life did not change overnight. It takes effort to do that and not magic.
Exactly. Yeah. So finding magic in everyday things, but not
acting only on that.
Yeah, as if that's all that will ever be.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So that is our forecast for this week. And tell me a little bit about this chart that you've picked out for me.
Well, actually, I'm going to jump to our topic first.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
So I'm going to lead you in the topic and then I'll bring up the chart.
Okay.
And we'll try to combine the two. See where or how possibly these two connections are. Because I want to see if you can connect it before I explain it.
Okay.
That sound good?
I'll do my best.
Okay. So our topic today is urban legends.
Okay.
What do you know of urban legends, or do you remember any from your childhood that were like really prominent, especially ones that were specific to you growing up? Because they don't need to be national urban legends, they don't need to be super popular. Urban legends can take place in our community.
Okay, yeah, I have a few. I mean, I remember doing Bloody Mary at
Yep.
sleepovers for sure, where you stand in the mirror, say Bloody Mary 3 times at midnight, and she's supposed to appear. But I remember this one story that supposedly happened to like a grandmother of a girl at our high school.
Exactly. Tell me more about this one.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I don't actually know if this is true, but
Exactly.
so many people told it
Uh-huh.
that it had its own like fame attached to it. So basically, there was this old woman who lived alone who was supposedly the grandmother of our classmate. And when she was doing dishes in her kitchen every night, she had a window that faced out into her yard, and she would see this man in the yard staring at her while she was doing dishes. And she was always creeped out by it, but she, was like, he's outside. I think she might have told people a couple times, like, oh, there's a man in my yard. Maybe her son or whatever came over and checked it out, said, I saw nobody in the yard.
And I imagine no one took her seriously.
Right. 'Cause
Right.
there was a little bit maybe of, some mental decline happening. And I don't remember exactly how they found out, but it turned out that she wasn't seeing a man outside, but she was seeing the reflection of a man standing behind her in the kitchen while she did her dishes.
Perfect urban legend.
Yes.
Yes. Because we'll get into it, but that teaches you a lesson that you listen to people and you trust them.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So mine, similar to that, is I remember being in elementary school and our playground was next to the woods. Like it was really deep woods that were a little bit far off, but like that's where all the kids wanted to play because it was the furthest away from the teachers. So there was this story that someone's brother's class, right? Like always, forever. Someone's older brother or older sister, whatever it was at that point, their teacher, who had since retired, so you couldn't even ask that teacher, had brought the class out into the woods to do peanut butter pine cones for birds in the spring. And they were chased out of the woods by a naked man with a knife.
What?
Right. And so like what that did is it spread the story of the naked man all the way through the school. I remember being in fourth grade because it was like 4, 5, 6
Yep.
and immediately hearing the don't go near those woods. The naked man is in there, like,
oh my God.
So our school had the naked man urban legend.
That is actually horrifying.
Right. Exactly. And so like when you talk about like Bloody Mary is a little bit different because that is just like a weird thing that could happen. Like,
It's
but
like
there's
supernatural.
right. But there's no consequence to saying a child repeating words into a mirror. However, for both of the local ones that we just shared, there is a consequence and there's a lesson to learn from that. So it's like other things like the spider bite urban legend. Have you heard that one? Where you got bit by a spider, but you didn't check it and you didn't take it seriously, and then like it burst open.
Yeah, that stuff's so gross. I have heard that one.
What about the one where when you're driving and that you see a car without its headlights on and you flash them to let them know and they follow you home and kill you?
And I've actually thought of that when I've seen cars like that, and it has stopped me.
It has stopped me too.
Letting them know.
So these are all urban legends though, because it's like I think there's so many different versions. I've heard that one is like it's a gang initiation.
Yeah, exactly.
Not true.
No.
None of the there's just no truth to any of this. But what it is I went deep on this subject because I'm really interested in how urban legends affect us. And so the fastest way that I can summarize it is that they are similar to fables from the past for us. So some folklorists believe that urban legend stories reflect the fears that a culture or society has at that period in time. So not listening to people or children getting lost in the woods for mine are the lesson that we have to learn. So urban legends appear throughout the world and mimic common themes of human life regardless of the culture. They spread across the planet and they focus on safety. So 500 years ago, it was a big bad wolf in the woods, and that's why you didn't want children to wander away. And then flash forward to the mid-90s, it's a naked man with a knife that's keeping us out. It's the same story of stay away from the woods and don't get lost.
Right.
Our
the villain changes.
Right. They're trying to filter in the themes that would enact an action now.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Think about now it's 2024, right? Japan has an urban legend of a spirit called the Teke Teke. Have you heard about this before?
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
So I hope I pronounced it right. But this is the ghost of a young woman who was killed by a train. And now she is in Onryo, which is a vengeful spirit that roams train stations in urban areas at night. She has no legs, and so she travels on her elbows.
No, thank you.
And she drags what's left of her body around on the ground, making
What's
scratching
left of
sounds. So the lesson is trying to keep I don't want to like put this on people, but trying to keep young women from being alone at night.
Okay.
Right? You know,
but that's like what the culture is trying to
the culture is trying
yeah.
to do that. So the teki is going to keep you away from being the last person at a train stop alone.
Okay.
Because that's who they want to get. Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's a little manipulative, but also kind of interesting.
How it just breeds naturally, because you can't point at one person who will ever start an urban legend. It doesn't work like that. It's
No.
a community trying to protect itself with folklore.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I love that.
So now we're going to jump into our star chart of the week.
Okay.
I'll give you the information around this person, and then I would love you to try to connect what this person has to do with urban legends.
I will do my best.
Okay, so the birth date is 6/10/1922. The birthplace is Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And the time of birth is 6 a.m.
Okay, so I pulled up this person's chart. And I have to say, so upon looking at it, we know that they are a Gemini sun. Their moon is in Sagittarius, and their rising sign is Cancer. So the first thing I noticed when I looked at this chart is they have two difficult aspect patterns. So the aspect pattern that I'm seeing is the T-square. So a T-square is formed when you have two planets opposing each other in the sky that are both squaring a third planet. So it forms like a big triangle.
But squares are rough.
Squares and oppositions are rough.
Okay.
So a T-square is considered a tense aspect to have in the birth chart, and this person has two of them.
Damn, you're not going to...
It's a very difficult chart.
This is a very difficult person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Difficult person or difficult life?
Difficult life.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're fine. But you'll see. Notably difficult life.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, but there are a couple blessings, which we'll get to momentarily. So the first T-square is involving the sun, which is in Gemini in the 12th house, and it's opposing over to Mars in the 6th house in Sagittarius, and they're both squaring up to Uranus in the 9th house in Pisces. So this is a mutable T-square, which means that there's a lot of changeability in this person's life, and it might feel like it's outside of their control. The sun is opposite Mars, so there's a lot of internalized anger, especially maybe around like their daily life, their daily work, like what they were forced to do or like felt like they had to do. And there might have been some question as to who they really were. The sun.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I will make a benchmark in my mind of that. The sun in the 12th house, sometimes with that, it's really hard for the person to feel like they know exactly who they are in life. There's just a lot of maybe absorbing other people's energy or being told you're this, you're that, and feeling like they're just not sure of who they are in the world. And those are squaring up to Uranus, which means there's a lot of change and unpredictability going on. It was hard for them to feel like life was consistent with all of these changes. Okay.
And again, for our listeners, I want them to know that I did not share any of this information or this person.
Yeah, I have no idea who this is.
That's kind of the gimmick that we're doing here.
Yeah.
This is blowing my mind. This is the second episode in a row. We've only done 2. We're batting 100 so far.
I mean, it's like kind of vague, but it's cool to know that it's hitting. I mean, these are just patterns that like from doing hundreds of birth charts, things, and just reading things that I've picked up. So the second T-square involves the moon, Mercury, and Saturn. So Mercury is at 0 degrees Cancer. It just entered Cancer when this person was born. And it is opposing their moon in Sagittarius and then squaring down to Saturn in Libra. So this is also... well, it would be a mutable T-square, except Saturn is just on the opposite side of being an immutable sign. It just kind of ticked out of there. So with Mercury opposing the moon, this person could have a hard time expressing themselves. They might feel like there's communication difficulties, emotional difficulties. Squaring down to Saturn, there could be like some parental issues. I don't know if they had like a weird relationship with their father or like men in general. There's just a lot of like conflict there that I'm seeing. You're not saying anything.
I'm not saying anything.
Okay. So the positives here, like I wrote specifically, this is a very difficult chart. Like this, the thing about this is there are a couple positive aspects in this person's chart that are going to really help them, navigate life and not maybe be beaten down by it.
Okay.
Because the thing is, like, just because somebody has a lot of negative aspects in their chart, it doesn't necessarily mean that their life's going to be hard forever. Sometimes there could be circumstances in childhood that they then kind of triumph over and navigate well, or they could just be somebody who really starts to learn how to thrive on challenge. Like some people really, take that and run with it. People that are maybe injured but become like Olympic athletes or things like that. There could be some positives here. And the positives that I'm seeing are coming mostly from Venus and Neptune.
Okay. What does that mean?
So this tells me that this person probably had some creativity that they like to escape into. Venus is in Cancer. So there's a lot of like a big open heart here. This person had a lot of love to give. They were likely very creative and very much whether or not they shared that with the world, there was certainly like some talent or interest there. And Neptune is in the second house in Leo. So that would give them some sort of ability to kind of escape into like a fantasy world. So they kind of kept themselves protected from like harsh reality by being able to almost be in a bubble and like be protected from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Does the name Frances Ethel Gum ring a bell to you?
No.
Okay, so this is where I want you to put the pin that I told you about. That's because Frances Ethel Gum was not good enough. So they became Judy Garland and had an incredibly difficult life for many different reasons, escaping often into their art in order to step away from the world. Ready for this? This is so accurate, it's crazy. So,
oh my God. For anybody listening on audio, I was speechless because my mouth was hanging open.
Because I think just the general knowledge of Judy Garland is what you described, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it would seem that way. I mean, I don't know too much about her, but I know I think she had like some substance abuse issues and just had
It all stems from her early life being told that she was not good enough. And being
so sad.
Not just being told, being continually impressed upon that she wouldn't make it unless she changed the way that Hollywood wanted her to change. And that is what sculpted Judy Garland.
Wow.
So Judy Garland was an iconic actress with a very publicly tragic life. So she's known for a role as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Again, if we're talking about escaping the real world, people literally talk about escaping to Oz,
Yeah, like in a bubble, like
there you
Glinda.
go.
Like,
there you go.
Okay.
It's paralleling. It's weird. So she started out though as an accomplished singer. She became one as well, but that's really how she started her career. We know her from singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but she's also really well known for Christmas specials that we still listen to now, like Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas.
Oh, right.
Judy
Yeah.
Garland, And
Yep.
so that's, I remember literally being over my grandmother's house and like Judy Garland would be on from the day after Thanksgiving until New Year's Eve.
She was the Mariah Carey of like the 1940s.
That's right. Yes, exactly. And I think it's because she had that very recognizable voice too.
Yeah.
So the voice is what Hollywood wanted more so than the rest of it. So I'll get into that in a second. But as a child, her parents had her performing with her two other sisters, and they started doing just annual Christmas shows. Their group was called the Gum Sisters.
Oh, wow.
Which, again, is not super marketable in Hollywood in the 1940s.
No, they made so many ladies change their names.
Absolutely. And their tactics of getting them young so that you could mold them were kind of despicable to us now.
Yeah, how is that not grooming?
Exactly, because she signed a contract with MGM Studios at 13.
So sad.
And that's really where her life starts to become tragic, and it is their fault. Like,
Yeah.
I feel confident in saying that out loud. Because when we're teenagers and we're already thinking horrible things about ourselves and our appearance is when this studio is telling her that she is a potential big time money maker, but with the face of an ugly duckling. Actual quote.
That's so awful.
So this takes it a
And
step
not
further.
even true.
Right. Right. And so her appearance was constantly being questioned in spite of her talent. And the execs tried to alter her face as often as possible. She had to wear removable caps on her teeth and had a rubberized disc that would be placed on her nose and used with makeup so it would fade in because they didn't like how her face would look. So she had to wear prostheses
At
to play
13?
to play herself.
Wow.
So it's like, yeah, she's not like in a movie like, Marvel, where you'd be like, cool, like that's a
That makes
person
sense,
from
yeah.
another universe,
Right.
This is someone that they're like, oh, she doesn't look human enough for us, our standards. And so,
That is awful.
yeah, it really kind of unfortunately set the tone for a lot of her life, absorbing that. And then into adulthood, she had financial troubles. I didn't realize this, but like upon the time of her death, she owed hundreds of $1,000s in taxes.
Oh no.
And like you had mentioned earlier, it was finally her substance abuse problem that took her life at the age of 47.
That's so
in
young.
1969. So that is a brief overview of Judy Garland, who had this amazing talent, but unfortunately was not able to escape the square T that
Yeah,
you were talking about.
the double T squares. Yeah, I mean, sounds like with that aspect, I mean, too, that would just make you much more sensitive to what people have to say. So being around, like, I would recommend, like, for anyone who has these T squares, being around supported people is really what's going to help get you through it. And it sounds like she didn't have that.
The opposite
Yeah.
was in store for Judy Garland.
Yeah.
So what do you think that Judy Garland has to relate to urban legends about, though?
I mean, I've heard lots of urban legends about the Wizard of Oz.
Tell me.
I've heard that it was cursed, that they're like, there's that whole thing about like one of the people that maybe hung themselves
There you go.
on set, and then maybe like allergies to like the makeup and the Tin Man, and I think the original witch that they cast had makeup issues too or something.
Yeah, so let's get into that first,
Okay.
because that's not an urban legend. That's the true part.
Okay.
So the Tin Man inhaled so much aluminum from his makeup that he was placed in an iron lung to recover.
Oh my God.
The Wicked Witch received burns from the scene where, her broom catches on fire. It burnt her.
Wow. So those screams were real.
Yes.
Okay.
The stunt double for her spent 11 days in the hospital after a broomstick exploded because that sparking broomstick, do you know what it was? Like their budget for special effects? It was a hot pipe with sparks in it. And so
Why would they do that?
Exactly. And then unfortunately, Judy Garland was filming this when she was 16, and she was given amphetamines to pick her up for scenes and barbiturates to drop her down after her scenes ended.
That is horrible.
So those are the facts about how cruel the filming the Wizard of Oz was. But the urban legend is that a little person killed themselves on set in the background.
Oh my gosh.
So that didn't happen.
Okay, but so many people talk about it. I remember even seeing clips on YouTube or whatever of still frames of like a shadow that could be that.
Exactly. So here's what happened, though.
Okay.
The urban legend about the Wizard of Oz is that in the scene where the Tin Man is skipping down the yellow brick road with everyone, one of the little people can be seen hanging from a tree in the background. The studio claimed that never happened. It was an animal. They call it a crane, because there were animals on set that day for whatever reason.
Okay.
But it was removed during a remaster in 1989, which fueled the urban legend because people thought, why would you remove it unless it was something
Right.
sinister? However, I learned all those terrible things that happened on set during that movie, but suicide never did happen on set.
Okay.
And the legend can be put to rest because the time for the little people actors was after the call time for the little people actors, I should say, was after when the Tin Man was supposed to be wrapped on set. So they were never on set that same time that day. End of the urban legend.
Okay.
So what does that teach us, though?
I don't know. Just adding to the weird energy around that movie.
I think that's fair because, like Bloody Mary, not all urban legends are grounded in a lesson that you should take forward with you. Some just roll because of shock value, because that's human nature.
I mean, yeah, Wizard of Oz in general, like there's so many strange stories about it, like the Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, how that lines up with it. Like there's just so many cultural I don't know, cultural stories that accompany that.
And this would add to shock value for it.
It would.
So that's what I have for you about Judy Garland, her star chart, and how she relates to urban legends.
Wow. Tragic.
Yeah, it is. It's really rough, especially I don't know if it's almost harder to hear the star chart to know that like her blueprint of her life started without the best hand and unfortunately folded because of it. It seems.
Yeah, that is hard to see. I mean, there were some bright spots in it, which clearly were her talent, and it seems like she was a really good person, and it's just sad that she was treated that way.
Yeah. Sad topic for the second episode.
Yeah.
But, thank you for doing her reading. I think that was super accurate and wildly so. Like, to hear it, having done the research and understanding the parallels was really, really interesting.
Yeah, that was super fascinating for me as well.
Cool. Well, what are there any aspects that you want to highlight before we go of like what's coming up next week that people could look forward to before our next episode drops?
Yeah, so we're going to have Venus and Mercury will be entering Cancer next week, and they're going to be conjuncting, as I mentioned. We're also going to have the solstice take place and the sun move into Cancer, and we'll have a full moon happening next week as well. So we'll be talking about that.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next week then, Ash. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ty. Unclouded Eye stars Ashley Brooks and Ty Gowan and is produced and directed by Nick Nordfors. Music by Ashley Jane Cecilia and Jay Caron. Our community manager is Erin Cross. Art in our videos is by Dawn Aquarius. Unclouded Eye is presented by Haunt Me.